From Bitcoin, blockchain or distributed ledger technology to cryptocurrencies, tokens and initial coin offerings, it seems everyone involved has something to say, but can you really trust their advice? One man's had enough of weasel words and charlatans and is ready to give you impartial, independent analysis. With digestible blockchain bites, ICO analysis and need-to-know news on cryptocurrencies, author, speaker, transparency and clarity advocate and award-winning software innovator Barry James brings you Radio ICO. Welcome to episode 2 of the ICO Radio Show with Barry James. I'm Jamie Veach, introducing the show today and asking Barry a number of questions. And today's programme is a quick-fire run-through of some of the most frequently asked questions about cryptocurrencies and initial coin offerings. In the programme today, I asked Barry what's so transformative about the blockchain and why he's so excited about it. Whether cryptocurrencies are a new asset class, a bandwagon, or a dubious get-rich-quick scheme. Why we need to network our trust when it comes to learning about cryptocurrencies, whether they should be regulated, and if so, how. Barry also talks about what an ICO is in really simple terms, whether they're safe, whether they're secure, and again, should they be subject to regulation? All the answers are here in the podcast today, your second episode of the ICO Radio Show with Barry James. What is so transformative about blockchain, and why are you so excited about blockchain?
Yeah, blockchain is transformative in that it's a whole new game. So throughout history, and particularly as the world has become more connected and has become global, we've become more and more dependent on institutions, and especially banks, who move the money around. And that has all sorts of implications that we're just kind of used to. But we have a system that is effectively now toll roads with frictions built into it and costs built into it that, as I say, we don't even see these, because we're so used to it. And the potential of blockchain technology, public and private blockchains, is to change that. So fundamentally, the blockchain can allow you and I, whoever you and I are, wherever we are, to transact with one another securely without needing that third party. And the implications of that are enormous. It means that if we want to, we can build a world which is much more equal, where there aren't people exacting tolls at every crossroads, where it's permissionless. So actually we don't need permission to get on and create stuff and do things. And ultimately it's potentially transformative, not just for the economy, but for our civilization as a whole. So, I'm fascinated, as you know, in new technologies and their interaction with society, and this is, along with the internet, of which it's the next phase, the biggest one yet.
Some people describe Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as a brand new asset class. Some people describe them as a bandwagon that lots of people are jumping onto or into in the hope of getting rich quick, or rampantly speculating. Which are they?
Well, I would say probably, unfortunately, they're both. Fortunately, it clearly is a new asset class. They clearly are. Bitcoin and others clearly are a new asset class in that people are valuing them, buying and selling them. And as I think we mentioned earlier, that makes a lot of sense when you think about the value that they create. This is the future of money, and replacing all sorts of services. Fortunately or otherwise, I think it's unfortunately, people may very well, and they are, jumping on that as a way of making a quick buck. So speculators, day traders, all the rest of it, all coming on the back of that. but that's pretty much a separate thing, and the one is not dependent on the other, or rather, the day traders and the people on the bandwagon are dependent on the bandwagon, but the bandwagon rolls, independently of that, and this is, it's a really important change.
So if people want to get involved with or start exploring the world of cryptocurrencies, and let's be absolutely clear, this is not advice to do so, but if people are interested in doing so, who should they trust?
Okay, well, there's no one place to go for advice, and nor should there be. So there are some more authoritative sources. So, for example, the people behind the Ethereum network, who've been involved in creating the ecosystem, are worth listening to. Although they are geeks. Beyond those sorts of sources, it's really a matter of networking your trust. So listening to respected sources, and particularly people who you respect and have got good reason to respect, and creating and gaining your own understanding by comparing those things and being able to compare one with the other. So there's no one simple source.
Is the volatility that people observe in cryptocurrencies a sign that they're unstable?
It really depends what you mean by unstable. If you mean, can you rely on Bitcoin or Ethereum to have the same price tomorrow as it has today, they're definitely unstable. If you mean that they're unstable in the sense that they're likely to go away, the answer is a clear no. So why do I say that? These major cryptocurrencies and the newer ones, this applies to much less, but the established cryptocurrencies overall have been growing in value for the best part of 10 years now, and they consistently grow in value. So if you kind of take a longer time frame, you can see not only that value, which is only one indicator, but you can see how important this innovation is, and the blockchain innovation behind them, as well as the cryptocurrencies themselves, by their proliferation and by the seriousness with which they're being taken on a very, very wide front. Harvard Business Review, most of the banks, as we've said, have their own blockchain labs for a reason.
Regulation then. Should cryptocurrencies be regulated? If so, how best?
Yeah, this is a big problem, a big issue, because the first question is how. Obviously, with fiat currencies, it's very different because they are by nature controlled by a national government. But who could regulate? How do you regulate a cryptocurrency? You can ban it and exclude yourself from the global game, but that's hardly the same thing. So it's difficult to see how cryptocurrencies themselves can be regulated.
Okay, it's difficult to see how they in and of themselves could be regulated, but what about people's involvement with trading platforms? Should that be regulated?
Again, governments obviously have sway over their own laws and therefore their own population, and they can take themselves out of the game and they can take their population out of the game, but the game still goes on, and who wants to do that?
And a recurring theme in your previous work as an entrepreneur and your ongoing work as an entrepreneur has been smart regulation. What do you mean when you say smart regulation?
Yeah, this is really in the context mostly of equity crowdfunding, where we found ourselves in a situation where we've got regulation in the UK, same applies very much in the US and a lot of other places, that was designed for a different world, and has enshrined ways of doing things and laws which need no longer apply. But they're, by their very nature, very difficult to change. And one of the things that, historically we've been able to do is to point this out and to point out the need for regulation to evolve, at least, to support innovation. We had a really important change brought about by government, by George Osborne, as a result of the work that we were able to do on this. But going forward, what we need is not more regulation or less regulation, which is what most people mostly seem to talk about. It's smart regulation, by which I mean new ways of doing things that actually do the job. The job isn't regulation. The job is suppressing and removing fraud and malfeasance. So actually there are very often better ways through transparency and accountability to do that than the traditional ways. And, we're in a global market and we've got, all the countries involved in this to an extent competing. So, part of this is it's fascinating to see places like Gibraltar and others who start with almost a clean sheet coming forward with smarter regulation that is framed in this new world.
If you're asked to explain in really simple terms to someone perhaps new to this what an ICO is, can you do so? What's an ICO?
Okay, so first of all, it stands for Initial Coin Offering, but let's put that aside for a moment because it can be a bit of a distraction, the terminology. What it really is a way of funding a new idea. You can kind of think of it as Kickstarter for cryptocurrencies and blockchain projects, very approximately. It came from a chap called J.R. Willett, who I interviewed recently, the father of the ICO, who wrote the second Bitcoin white paper, saying that actually, the next thing that we could add to Bitcoin is programmability, and he proposed that the way of funding this could be effectively a crowd sale or a crowd fund, people contributing Bitcoin to pay for the project that actually happened, and that set the pattern for the ICO. So in essence, this is what they are. They tend to be much bigger by a factor of 1,000. So the average, Kickstarter, is in the 20 grand to 200 grand region. The average ICO is in the 20 million to 200 million region or so. So much bigger, and paradoxically also tend to fund ideas and projects at a much earlier stage.
Okay, so unpacking that, they tend to fund projects at an earlier stage. Are they safe? Are they secure? Are people funding something with absolutely no guarantee?
Yeah, I think it would be fair to say that people are funding things that are high risk, that they know that they have no guarantee, and that's the key. The people who are putting their Bitcoin, their Ethereum more often than Bitcoin, into this know that they're funding something for which they have no guarantee.
Okay, you've described the risk there around ICOs. Why are people backing them?
It's really simple. People fundamentally want a better world. And it's just like Kickstarter, they fundamentally want these things to happen. Yes, quite often there will be people who are also motivated by hope of a return. Okay, so it may be that there are people who are doing purely for that reason, but the invitation is really much like a Kickstarter project to get on board, help make this new service or or capability or whatever that, or protocol, whatever it is, make it happen in order that people can use it more generally, or that I can use it myself. And that's the call. If speculators come in on that, they may or may not be able to get a return on investment. But fundamentally, that's what they're there for. And that's what people are investing in.
So let's return to regulation then. Regulation around ICOs this time. Could they be regulated? Should they be regulated? And if so, how?
Okay, well, the first part of that is, can they be regulated? Difficult, because they're global. And how do you do that? Should they be regulated? Certainly, people like the SEC and the FCA think, and there's good force to this argument, that if you're just wrapping a cryptocurrency or an ICO around a regulated activity like selling shares, then that in order to evade the regulation and commit some kind of fraud, then obviously that's a huge concern and does fall within the purview rightly of a regulator. But the real difficulty is how you frame the regulation and how you draw the line between things that are the kind of things I've just been talking about, such as equities and so on, shares, and tokens which are usage tokens, where what you're buying is the right to use the service, typically once it's created, which don't require regulation. So it's not a definitive yes or no. Clearly, we don't want fraud, we don't want bad actors, and we need to have and should have, and I believe will have, the means to make sure that's the case. But regulation, as we've known it, needs to adapt, and we need smart ways of doing this.
So let's talk about transparency. And the first obvious question, Barry, given your commitment to transparency, is: are you sitting on a massive pile of cryptocurrency and you're hoping that by getting involved in your own work in the sector, in the industry, that you'll create further rises that you'll benefit from?
Oh, I wish. Yeah, I really wish I was one of the people who had all that foresight to be in this from the very beginning. Yeah, I mean, just for the purposes of this interview, so everyone knows, yes, I have a little bit of Ethereum and a bit of Bitcoin. We're talking, tens or hundreds of pounds here, in order to, kind of understand the mechanisms and be able to help other people as well. I may well buy some more in the future, but that's not the point. So why am I doing this? Well, if you kind of look back over the last few years, I've kind of been involved for a very, very long time now at the forefront of the most exciting and transformative technologies for society, and most visibly with crowdfunding, and played a public role, in helping with the public understanding and the issues around the nation, the country and the world in all of this. And I see what I'm doing now as really an extension of that work. I think we are on a very fast moving train towards a future that the vast majority of people don't understand yet. And I think that throws up huge challenges as well as threats and opportunities for businesses everywhere and for society in general. So what excites me, and is thankfully part of my day job, is helping people understand what's going on and the transformation that's happening, and the transformations that are coming down the track very fast. From all this new technology, and helping make it plain, translating from from geek speak to language that us ordinary mortals can use and understand.
So in terms of access to information, to transparency, to analysis that you're putting out there, where can people go?
Okay, so there are 3 sites in fact, 2 for the general reader and 1 a very specialist one. So for most people, the place to start is ICOnewsdesk.com, where we collect together all the breaking news and the latest stuff on ICOs, on blockchain, on Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and there'll be increasingly more information there over time. Secondly, from there we will shortly launch transparenticos.com. That's transparenticos.com, where we're doing our bit to bring transparency to the ecosystem. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is helping people who are running ICOs be really clear about what it is they're doing, who's doing it, why they're doing it. So we're going, transparency is really important. It's sunlight and fresh air, and is extraordinarily powerful in this. So that's part of our contribution. And then finally, if you're involved in an ICO or thinking of running one, you can go to ICOtoolkit.com. That's ICOtoolkit.com, where you'll find tools. You can ask questions and materials that will be helpful. I should also say at any of those sites, you'll also be able to find a little section there, a button to ask the experts, because actually we want your questions. We want to be able to help by answering the questions that arise from listening to stuff like this.
That's great, Barry. Thank you very much. Can you just give the 3 website addresses once more?
Sure. So it's ICOnewsdesk.com is the first one. Then there is transparenticos.com. That's transparenticos with an S.com. And then the final one is ICOtoolkit.com.
Okay, great. And is there anything else that we've missed or that you want to cover or signpost in particular?
Yes, actually, I'd like to signpost, I think I just mentioned it earlier once, but ask an expert. So this is a difficult area to get your head around, and I know people have questions, so we want to help with that. So on ICO News Desk and also on Transparent ICOs, we've created an Ask an Expert capability. So please do come. Please, after this session or anything else, whether it's our material or anyone else's, that raises questions for you, particularly if they're questions that you think other people might be asking or thinking about. Come and ask an expert. If we know the answer, we'll provide it for you. And if it's a good question and we don't, then we'll go and find those answers for you and find the expert to ask.
That's great, Barry. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to me, Barry James, on ICO Radio. If you have a question that you'd like to pose for us, or if there's someone that you think we should have on the show or interview, or indeed you yourself would like to contribute to the show, please let us know. You can email us via podcast@ICO Radio. That's ICORAD.io. You can get the address from the show notes too, and we'd love to hear from you. But beyond that, thank you so much for listening to the show, and if you enjoyed it, please do leave us a review.
ICO Radio was brought to you by author, speaker, transparency and clarity advocate, and award-winning software innovator Barry James. Get in touch with the programme, put yourself or someone else forward as a guest. Visit ICOnewsdesk.com. And if you've enjoyed the show, please leave a review. And don't forget to subscribe to get your next insights and interviews from the ICO Radio podcast.